Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's your average programmer here, and today we are going to be talking about constructors. Now, if we go on Microsoft.com, we are going to take a look at what a constructor is. So if we can see here, as we see here, whenever a class or struct is created, its constructor is called. So whenever we create a class or an instance of a class, one of its constructors is called, whether you have a constructor in the class or not. As we continue, it says a class or struct may have multiple constructors that take different arguments. This is what we call constructor overloading, and I'm going to show you an example of that when we get into Visual Studio. Constructors enable the programmer to set default values, limit instantiation, and write code that is flexible and easy to read. So what does all of this mean? I'm going to show you right now. Let's head into Visual Studio, create a new console project, and we are going to call it construct or whatever you want. Console app, whatever it is. So once again, a constructor allows you to pass in values that you can set to one of an object's properties. In this example, we're going to be creating something simple, a simple application that creates a person, that creates several people, sorry. So by now you should know how to create a class. If you don't know how to create a class, you can watch one of my previous videos. I'm going to call this class person. I'm going to go ahead and move this class to another file. We are going to open up this class called person. So as you see here, we've got a class called person. Now we're going to instantiate some properties and just one method. Public string. Some properties that a person has is a name. Person also has an age. Public, which is an integer. I'm going to keep it simple for now. Just these two properties we're going to have. We're also going to write one method, public, which does not return anything and just says hello. Again, trying to keep this as simple as possible just so you can focus on the task at hand, which is understanding constructors. All it does is console.write lines. I don't know what happened here. Console.write line. Hello. All it's going to do is say hello. Now we need to add a using statement so we can use a console or use the system. So we've got a person class. This entire thing right here is a person class. And it's got two properties, name and age. And just a simple method that says hello. Prints out literally the words hello. Or the word hello. Now we're going to create a constructor. By default, when you don't create a constructor, the program automatically creates one for you. The compiler creates one for you. But we're going to do it explicitly this time, just so you can see what a constructor is and how you can use it to make your code a lot simpler and to make your class or program a lot easier to use. So we've got a constructor. First starts off with the access modifier, and then it goes straight into the name of the class. This is how you define a constructor. Just by an access modifier, the name of the class. There you go. You've got a default constructor, a parameterless constructor. So this is one constructor. We're going to create another constructor same way, but with this constructor we're going to pass in parameters. We're going to pass in one parameter of string name, this is another constructor we've got here, but with this constructor we pass in a string of name. And we're going to take this name that we pass in and we're going to set it to this property over here that we created. So we've got name equals name. That's it. So once we actually use this constructor, once we pass in a name, it's automatically going to be assigned to the property that we passed in here. And now whatever object we created from this class is going to have that name as the name we passed in. So we've got two constructors here. When you create more than one constructor, we call it constructor overloading. So you've got different constructors, same constructor, but the only difference is the parameters, the number of parameters we passed in, and the type of parameter that we pass in. Now let me show you something that you might confuse yourself with. Let's say we want to create a person with a name, and we want to pass in their name. But we also want to create another person, and for that person we want to pass in their eye color. Let's go ahead and create another constructor. And in here we pass in string eye color. The reason this red underline is here is because the compiler cannot interpret the difference between these two constructors. Now when you instantiate a constructor, the compiler knows the differences between constructors by the type of the constructor, of the parameter that you pass in, and the number of parameters that you pass in. So according to the constructor, there is no difference between these two constructors. According to the compiler, there's no difference between these two constructors. To you, there is a difference, obviously, eye color and name. But to the compiler, these two are the same because you pass in the same type and the same number of parameters. So if we were to add another parameter in here of type string, let's just say hair color. Hair color. This is fine because this, although these have the same data type, which is a string, this one has two parameters that we're passing in. This one only has one. And remember, I told you that the compiler interprets the difference by type and by the number of parameters that we pass in. Since this one has all types of string, all of the data types that we pass in here are strings, and there's a different number of parameters that we pass in, the compiler can interpret the difference. So again, if I were to keep just one, there would not be a difference because the number of parameters that we pass in and the types are the same. So I hope that makes sense to you. If not, just ask me down in the comments below. I will be sure to make sense of it for you. I will respond to you and make sure you understand it. So let's go ahead and delete this. Actually, let's use this. Pass in a name and an integer of age. So we've got three constructors here. One parameter list, one where we just pass in a string name, and this one where we pass in name and integer. And we're going to take these values that we pass in and assign them to the properties that we have here. So same with this, we can just copy and paste, or you can rewrite. I'm lazy, so I'm going to copy and paste, and then we're going to take this property called age, and we're going to assign it the value that we pass in to here, age. And there we go. We've got our constructors. So let's create an object or a person from this class. We're going to create three different people just so we see how you make use of constructors. We've got person1 equals new person. We've got one person right here. This is an entire person, and this person uses the default constructor because we haven't passed any parameters into here, so it's going to use this one. As you can see, we have not passed any parameters into here. So if we were to console.writeLine person1.name, let's get rid of this, we would not get anything back because we have not assigned a value to the person's name. As you can see here, there's nothing. But let's go ahead and create another person. Person2 equals new person. Now we're going to take advantage of the constructor where we can pass in a name. We're going to call this person Bob. And if we console.writeLine person2.name, you're going to see here we can get the name Bob. Because it makes use of the parameter that we pass in, the one string parameter that we pass in, it assigns the name property to, or it assigns the name that we pass in to the name property. So it makes use of this constructor. So doing it this way is much easier than doing this. This would be the alternative if we don't use constructors. Person1.name equals Tom. Person1.age equals 50. This is a lot harder to read than just passing in a parameter into a constructor. This takes a lot more time than doing this, which is what parameters are used for, to make your life a lot easier. So let's go ahead and create a third person. Let's make use of the third parameter, or the third constructor that we created. Person3 equals new person. So let's take a look at the constructor. As you can see here, it takes in a string name and an integer of age. So with this first person, we had to explicitly use this dot notation to assign a value to the name. With this, we can pass in Bob, and we can pass in an age of 43. And we can console.writeLine person3.name, also console.writeLine person3.age. As we can see here, let's wait, give it a sec. Actually, let's restart that. There we go, perfect. Bob 43. So this is what constructors are used for. As you can see, it makes your life a lot easier. So if you have any questions, please leave them down for me in the description and let me know what questions you have and what is it. So I hope you have a good one. You take care. You enjoy your day. I hope I made this video easy for you to understand. If you don't have any questions, again, please leave them down in the description. Hit the like button and subscribe if you want to stay tuned for more. Thank you. Have a good day.